The town of Red Hollow sat in the middle of dust and silence, a lonely cluster of wooden buildings where rumors traveled faster than horses and secrets were buried under years of sand. At 19, Clara Mayfield had dreamed of leaving that town, dreamed of schoolbooks and faraway cities. But dreams were luxuries for girls born into debt and desperation. When her father's gambling debts finally came due, he sold the only thing he had left, her hand in marriage, to a man she had never spoken to and barely seen. A man the town whispered about in hushed tones, Jacob Ironjaw Hale, the reclusive cowboy rancher, with a scarred face and a reputation colder than the desert nights. Clara met him for the first time on the day of the wedding. He stood tall in front of the small wooden church, wearing a dark coat despite the heat, his jaw clenched like stone, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of his hat. People said he had killed 3 men in his youth, that he never smiled, that his ranch was filled with hired guns and buried secrets. Clara's hands trembled as she walked toward him, her simple white dress stitched by her mother, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. She felt like livestock being traded, and she hated her father for it. But she hated herself more for not being able to stop it. The ceremony was quick. No music, no flowers, just the dry words of the preacher and the echo of boots on wooden floors. When Jacob said, "I do," his voice was deep and calm, but it carried no warmth. When Clara whispered her vows, her voice cracked. She felt trapped, caged, sold. The townspeople watched with curiosity, some with pity, others with envy at the land and money Jacob owned. But no one envied her. They believed she was marrying a beast. After the ceremony, they rode to his ranch in silence. Jacob rode ahead, leading the horse that carried her. He didn't speak, didn't look back, didn't offer comfort. Clara stared at the vast land stretching endlessly, wondering if she would ever escape it. The ranch was massive, far larger than she imagined. Rolling fields, cattle, barns, and a large wooden house overlooking a small creek. Yet it felt lonely, as if Joy had never lived there. Inside the house, everything was neat and clean, but cold. Jacob showed her a bedroom, her bedroom, simple but spacious, with a large window and a handmade wooden bed. "You'll stay here," he said quietly. "Supper's at sundown." Then he left. No touch, no threat, no kindness, just distance. Clara spent the day sitting on the bed, staring at the walls, thinking about her childhood, her lost dreams, and the strange man who was now her husband. She feared what would happen at night. The town's stories haunted her mind. She imagined cruelty, shouting, pain. But when sundown came, Jacob simply knocked once, waited, and led her to the dining table. He served food himself, beans, bread, roasted meat, then ate in silence. When she finished, he nodded once and returned to his study. Night passed quietly. No footsteps, no door opening, no harsh words. Days turned into weeks, and Jacob remained distant. He never raised his voice. He never touched her except to hand her something or help her onto a horse. He worked long hours, riding fences, managing cattle, speaking to ranch hands. Clara stayed in the house, slowly learning to cook, clean, and explore the land. She began to notice things. Jacob paid his workers fairly, treated animals gently, and gave money to the town church anonymously. But no one knew. They only knew the rumors. One afternoon, Clara overheard 2 ranch hands talking. "Boss Hale ain't what folks think," one said. "He built that schoolhouse in Willow Creek last year. Paid for it himself," the other laughed. "Yeah, but don't expect him to talk about it. Man's got a heart buried deeper than a gold mine." Clara felt a strange confusion. Why would such a feared man do such kind things? Why had he agreed to marry her? She decided to ask him, but every time she tried, words failed. He was a wall she didn't know how to climb. The town prepared for the official wedding celebration, CUD, public reception Jacob had insisted on hosting. "For appearances," he said. The townspeople were excited, curious, suspicious. They expected luxury, arrogance, or perhaps cruelty. Clara expected nothing but embarrassment. On the day of the celebration, people gathered at the ranch. Music played, food was served, and laughter filled the air. Jacob stood beside Clara, silent but present. When the time came for the wedding gift, the whole town gathered around. The preacher announced, Mr. Hale wishes to present a gift to his bride and to the town. Jacob stepped forward, his face serious, his voice calm but firm. He handed Clara a small wooden box. Inside she found old papers, maps, and a deed. Confused, she looked at him. Then he turned to the crowd. "This land," he said, "the North Pasture and the Creek Valley, will be donated to build a school, a clinic, and homes for widows and orphaned children. My wife will manage it. It will be hers, not mine." Gasps filled the crowd. People whispered. Some cried. No one had ever expected such a gift, not only to a bride, but to the entire town. Clara stared at him, stunned. He had given her power, land, purpose. He had given the town hope. For the first time she saw the man behind the rumors. Not a monster, not a tyrant, but a wounded soul who believed kindness didn't need applause. And in that moment, Clara realized her fear had blinded her to something extraordinary. The days after the celebration changed everything in Red Hollow. People who once crossed the street to avoid Jacob Hale now tipped their hats when he rode into town. Women whispered about Clara with new respect, and children followed Jacob's horse, laughing and waving. But for Clara, the change was deeper and more personal. She felt as if she had awakened from a long nightmare into a life she never imagined possible. The land deed rested in her hands like a symbol of freedom she never thought she would touch. She was no longer just a traded daughter or a silent bride. She was a woman with purpose. Clara began visiting the North Pasture every morning. She walked along the Creek Valley, imagining a schoolhouse filled with children's laughter, a small clinic where wounded cowboys and sick mothers could find help, and homes where widows and orphaned children would not sleep in fear of hunger. The land felt alive under her feet, as if it had been waiting for her. Jacob rode with her sometimes, keeping a respectful distance, pointing out water sources and safe building spots, explaining soil and weather as if he had been planning this for years. He never told her what to do. He listened. That surprised her more than anything. One evening, as the sun sank into the horizon like molten gold, Clara finally found the courage to ask him the question that had haunted her. "Why did you marry me?" she asked quietly while they sat on the porch. "You could have chosen anyone. My father sold me to you like property. Why did you accept?" Jacob stared at the fading light for a long time. The silence stretched heavy and thick, until she thought he would walk away again. But then he spoke, his voice low and rough, as if every word was carved from stone. He told her about his past, about being an orphan raised by brutal ranchers, about fighting to survive, about losing the only woman he ever loved to illness, because there was no doctor in their town. He told her he had built his ranch with blood and sweat, but loneliness had followed him like a shadow. When he heard about her situation, he saw a chance to save someone from the same kind of helplessness he once felt. He didn't want a servant or a frightened wife. He wanted a partner, someone who could shape a future kinder than his past. Clara's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she saw the scars behind his silence. He wasn't cold. He was wounded. He wasn't cruel. He was cautious. She reached out and placed her hand over his. He stiffened at first, then slowly relaxed, as if he had forgotten what comfort felt like. As months passed, construction began on the school and clinic. Clara worked tirelessly, riding between town and ranch, organizing volunteers, learning to negotiate, learning to lead. The town began calling her Miss Clara Hale, not with fear or pity, but with admiration. Children hugged her, women sought her advice, and men respected her decisions. Jacob watched from a distance, proud but silent, as if he believed love was something shown through deeds, not words. But not everyone was pleased. Clara's father, consumed by guilt and jealousy, accused Jacob of buying his daughter's affection. Some townsmen muttered that Jacob was trying to control the town through charity. Rumors spread again, but this time Clara stood strong. She spoke publicly at the church gathering, telling everyone that kindness was not control, and that generosity was not a trick. Her voice trembled at first, but then it grew steady. She realized she was no longer the frightened girl walking down the church aisle. She was a woman who had found her strength in unexpected places. One night, a violent storm swept across Red Hollow. Lightning struck the old barn and fire spread quickly. Ranch hands and townspeople rushed to help. Jacob and Clara rode into the chaos side by side. Flames roared, cattle panicked, and people screamed. Without hesitation, Jacob ran into the burning barn to free trapped horses. Clara followed, ignoring the heat and smoke. Together, they saved animals and workers, coughing, sweating, risking their lives. When they finally emerged, covered in ash and exhaustion, the town saw them not as a mysterious cowboy and his young bride, but as two people fighting for their community. After the fire, Jacob collapsed from smoke inhalation. Clara sat by his bedside for days, refusing to leave. She held his hand, spoke to him, and prayed. When he finally woke, he saw tears on her face and felt her fingers wrapped tightly around his. In that moment, he understood that love had quietly grown between them, not through force, but through shared purpose and mutual respect. Years later, the school stood tall, children reciting lessons, the clinic healing the sick, and small homes sheltering widows and orphans. Red Hollow transformed from a dusty, forgotten town into a place of hope. Clara and Jacob walked through the fields together, their hands intertwined, their past fears replaced by shared dreams. Clara often thought back to her wedding day, the fear, the trembling, the belief that her life was over. Instead, that day had become the beginning of her true life. She learned that courage could grow in the most unexpected soil, and that love could be built slowly, like a strong ranch fence, post by post, wire by wire. Jacob, once feared and misunderstood, became a legend, not for his gun or his silence, but for his kindness and humility. And Clara, once sold into marriage, became a leader who shaped the destiny of an entire town. Moral lesson: never judge a person by rumors or first impressions. True character is revealed through actions, not words. Fear can blind us, but courage and understanding can turn even the darkest beginning into a powerful and beautiful future. Kindness, when given quietly and sincerely, can change not just one life, but an entire community.